People filtering in. I'm sure there'll be some more, but good morning, everyone, and welcome to this morning's webinar. Before we get into it, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands that we are gathered on today and pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. If you don't know me, I'm Richard Berry. I'm the Hub Coordinator at the Integrated Innovation Network. We are the Entrepreneurship Centre at the University of Newcastle, and we're helping students, researchers, and members of the wider community commercialize their ideas and inventions through events like this and through some cohort-based programming. So no matter what stage you may be at, maybe you have an idea or maybe you're growing your business, we'd love to hear about what you're doing. So seek us out, myself or my colleague Siobhan, after the event, and we'd love to know more. But anyway, to this morning's event. Startup Stories takes place each month and is an opportunity for founders to talk candidly about their experience, the highs and the lows, and their insights into all of that. So our guest speaker this morning is a highly valued iTwin Hub Hunter Street member. He's founded multiple companies and he has a bit of a roller coaster of a story and insights to share with us all this morning. So without any further ado, I'd like to welcome Matt Barry of Actified.
Cool. Thanks, Richard. And thank you first for having me and giving me this opportunity to talk. I'm relatively new to the Newcastle area, having moved from Sydney just under a year ago now, and am loving being a part of the iTwin space and very much loving the opportunity to, I guess, extend my skill set in doing talks such as this sort of stuff. So thank you everyone who's jumped on as part of this chat. And what I might do just to start, actually I can share my screen and I can kick off my presentation. Okay, can we see that, Richard? Yeah, I'm assuming, yeah. Cool. So yeah, great. Awesome. So what I'd like to do is, okay. There we go. What I'd like to do is to try and curate my content. So I've got quite a bunch of different things to talk about here. I can talk and ramble for ages, but what I'd like to try and make sure that I do is curate my content so that you guys who are jumping on are getting what you would like to get out of this. So what I'd like you all to think about is why did you join this or register for this event, and what are you hoping to learn, or is there anything particular that you want to hear about or gain some experience into from this discussion? So what I'll get you to do is, I think Richard said that there's some instructions on how to engage. We've got a chat, so chuck your questions or your responses in the chat. I think Richard will go through and curate some of that stuff, and we can come back to it later. If there's anything relevant or at a particular time in the presentation, feel free to jump in on the chat and I'll get Richard to sort of cut in and we can address it while it's actually relevant. But yeah, would really like some feedback and to try and make this as interactive as possible. It's a little bit strange sitting in a room by myself and talking at a screen rather than a room full of people. So yeah, if you could give me some idea of what you're looking to get out of this and what you're hoping to learn or hear about, that would be fantastic and would really help me get into a bit of a groove of the presentation. So while you're having a think about that, I could give a quick background, historical background, I guess, of some of the things I've done, which may help people think about what sort of questions they can ask. So just briefly, if we go all the way back to university, I went to Wollongong University, studied computer science and graphic design. So I was very much I'm still very much a creative person. That's sort of the side of startups that I like to focus on. But always wanted to build websites or learn how to build websites. So took a computer science course as well. That was a double degree that took me through 5 years. And by the time I finished that, I had the intent of going and working for a graphic design firm, but ended up just starting to freelance. So worked for myself for about 4 to 5 years, slowly building that up, just working as a freelancer, a contractor. And after a while, managed to team up with a guy who, in the end, we partnered on the startup WiSecure. But I partnered up with him and we did quite a bit of work together for probably 2 or 3 years. After a while, we got sick of doing the same thing over and over again, and I guess starting from scratch on new contracts all the time. So having to find new clients, and yeah, I guess the whole process of felt very repetitive, and what we'd get together and discuss our ideas a lot, and in the end decided that what we wanted to do, instead of just building websites, was to try and build a product and service one product. We thought that this would be a better way to work and a better way to actually earn a dollar. So the original, I guess, genesis of wanting to get into startups was to earn money. We didn't have any amazing insights and wanted to change the world. We wanted to earn money. So after working together on a few little projects, without getting a whole lot of traction on anything, we decided to bring in a CTO, Ivan. We worked with Ivan on 2 or 3, I think, small projects together to get an understanding of how we would work as a team. And after a while, figured that it was going to work, and ended up incorporating a business. Originally, we were in a company called WebInspire. We found very quickly that WebInspire had very strong links to websites. We were building for financial services companies, so we needed to change our name, changed over to a company called WiSecure, and then I spent 3 or 4 years, I believe, working in WiSecure. Ivan, the CTO, worked in the company for about 3 years, and Brad, the CEO, was in the company for 4 to 5 years before we ended up exiting. So, as I said, I've got quite a range of experience in working with small business, working on my own businesses, starting a number of businesses, and different projects along the way. So if anyone has any particular questions around anything, I guess any aspects of business, small business, starting up business, feel free to chuck it in the chat. Okay, I feel like I've rambled a lot there, so might actually kick off the proper presentation. So if I can get my technology to work. All right, great. So the way that I've organized this presentation is to fit with a couple of sort of key ideas, and come up with a few points around each of those. I've tried to attach these to stories or experiences that I have, so that I'm not just, I guess, preaching different startup concepts. Hopefully there's a bit of an interesting story attached. I'm just trying to think, sorry. Okay, so I might just start here with starting up. So we found, oh, sorry, that was the thing. Oh, man, okay. I need some practice on this Zoom thing. All right, so the other point is that I should make is that this is my experience. I'll speak to a lot of these points as fact, but they're far from fact. They're my experience. Everyone's experience is different. There's a lot of different ways to do things. So the idea of this is to try and give you some insights and share some of my experiences to hopefully give you a starting point, hopefully help you skip over any of the pitfalls that I found, but also potentially just to give you a contrasting perspective or a different way of looking at things. Okay, so I might just start with the startup. So we went with 3 founders. We found that this worked really well. I like the concept of 3 people, even in terms of traveling. I find it's a case that you're always getting on with one person if you are fighting with other people, and there will be conflict. We found that it was really important to have a shareholder agreement. So we did that at a very early stage. We set out our responsibilities and our expectations, and we actually did have to refer back to that a number of times, particularly when we were dealing with conflict. Shareholder agreement is very important, so I highly recommend that. One point that I found was relevant in reflecting on the journey, and this was more apparent later in the process, was I think our startup would have worked better if we had a clear majority shareholder. Between the 3 of us, we went a 30-30-40 split. Our CEO with and Brad as a 40% shareholder. We found that this created some challenging dynamics where Ivan and myself were looking to Brad for a lot of drive and direction. Brad would often also require or want us to have a greater say and a greater input into the drive and direction. And the fact that there wasn't a really clear majority shareholder, I think ultimately was a challenge for us in being successful with the company. One of many challenges anyway. So yeah, referring also to the shareholder agreement and starting up early. Everyone's best friends when you start, and you're all thinking about the best case scenario. It's really important to plan for the worst case scenario and hope for the best. And this will put you in good stead. If everything works out well, then fantastic. You don't have to worry about it. And also, one thing that I've learned is it really doesn't cost a lot of money to start a company. There are plenty of companies, resources out there that will allow you to register and do all of the legal background work for a company at a very cost-effective price. So you can actually get up and running very quickly. So there's no excuses not to start. If anyone wants some information on those resources, feel free to reach out at a later date or at the end of this, and I can point you in the direction of some resources there. Okay, so personalities. So yeah, I've got here, know who you're working with. So our approach initially with the startup with WiSecure was to try out a few small projects first, and that helped us understand that yes, we will work together. The founder dynamic worked for us, and I think that was a really important thing. It's not always realistic, but I think at very least you need to spend some time talking to the people you're going to work with and understanding them, and understanding, as I said in this second point, expectations and motivations. Everyone's very different. Everyone has their own motivations for getting into business, and also has a different background. So different at-home life, different financial situation, different time expectations. So it's really important to discuss these points early on. Since having left WiSecure and now starting up another smaller business, I've found that this was a very important point in discussing with my new co-founders, and it helped put us all on the same page from the start, so that you're not waiting for conflict to arise to bring up these discussions. You actually know where everyone stands from the start. Looking at conflict, I've learned to embrace conflict. Conflict is good. It's very important from a business perspective. It helps you gain important insights, and it helps you get the best results. Initially, I was a very conflict averse person. And once I found that once you start looking beyond the personal and looking at purely business motivations and from a business perspective, it really helps with dealing with conflict. So when you remove all of the personal aspects of it, refine everything down to what are you trying to achieve? How are you trying to achieve that? And what's the best approach from a business perspective? Conflict becomes a lot easier to deal with. And also a key point here that was very important for me is when everything is against you, who do you want to have in the trenches with you? Startups are a real battle. I nearly left WiSecure about 1.5 years into the company. There was conflict between the founders. We got along quite well, but from the business perspective, expectations of effort being put in and time devoted weren't aligned with what was being delivered. In my case, I was distracted with other work because I was trying to earn a living. This didn't work well for my other co-founders, and it led to conflict. Once we actually worked our way through that, we came out at the other side a lot better and stronger for it. But at that time, the one thing that stopped me leaving the company was the CEO, Brad. And he turned to me and said, I had spoken to him, and I actually had a phone call with him about leaving. And at that time he said, don't, I want you in this company. And that was very important for me and helped me, I guess, understand what I needed to do for the company and gave me that assuredness moving forward in the company. Also later on, there were many times where we had threats of legal action, things weren't going right. There were a lot of challenges within the business, and I found that particularly working with my two co-founders, we came together quite well. And that was really important for getting all of us and the company through really challenging periods. So I would say personality is more important than technical ability, because ultimately when everything's against you, it's the type of people you want to work with, not what their technical skill set is. Okay, so looking at conflict quickly, I might try and move through this a bit quicker. I found also dealing with conflict, it really helps to understand the people that you're working with or you're dealing with in conflict, and what their motivations are, what their personalities are, and how they communicate. It became very apparent after a number of challenging conversations in the business that the three of us working together had very different approaches, different languages, and different ways of dealing with things, and conversations that, and I guess discussions and even arguments early on in the process that were really challenging and felt like they were almost fatal became very easy later in the stage, or later in developing the company, because we actually understood how each other spoke. And when one person would say something, you can translate that. You actually understand what they're really saying, rather than saying you're an idiot. They're saying, oh, I don't agree with this. So working on understanding who the people are you're in conflict with, and their personalities and their motivations is very important. Also, I found that looking at, and this probably more goes to working with conflict with clients, and this became a relevant point, because our CEO Brad is a very passionate guy, and there are a number of times where we had challenges with clients where he would get hung up on trying to resolve it in a certain way, and it wasn't necessarily the most productive thing, and it really helped to actually take a step back and look at what were the ultimate goals of this. Sometimes, and I say sometimes, but there are a lot of times when battles aren't worth being fought. Look at what you're trying to achieve. Look at what the person you're in conflict with, what their motivations are, and what they're looking to achieve out of it. And sometimes you're better off just avoiding any further discussions. Also here, I've got avoid burning bridges. This is very easy when in conflict, particularly with clients. But I found that you want to, again, looking at what you want to achieve out of conflict, look to the future, look to in a year's time, is it worthwhile having burnt a bridge, or could there potentially be further opportunity down the track? You never know where the network might lead to. So look to the future, look to what you want to achieve there. Okay, looking to customers. So our experience with customers, so reflecting on the how we started up, as I said, we didn't really have a insightful moment of I guess lightning strike where we wanted to change the world and do something amazing. We were working with a client. Our CEO saw some opportunities within their business to make some improvements, and we saw the opportunity to turn those small projects into a product suite. So we were working with a company, Spectrum Wealth Advisors, early on, and they were a financial dealer group, and they were invaluable at providing insights into their business, what challenges they were facing, and helped us develop for a specific use case. This was fantastic from an early stage and giving us a focus and a direction, but it also came with a number of challenges. So looking at the second point there, be a partner, not an employee. So the whole dynamic of working with a client, particularly in that situation, was challenging. I guess the way that we saw the relationship as we were building this product, and this client was providing insights for us, whereas there were a number of cases where the client used us as more of an employee, and considered us more of an employee, and considered us as building specifically for them. So this led to some challenges in managing expectations of delivery of features, or I guess devotion of time to the product, and it also was very challenging at a later date when we looked at pricing and contracts. So we set our prices very early. We spent 3 years working with this client, and at 3 years down the track, when we were trying to update our pricing to something that was a bit more reflective of the situation, it was a real challenge to try and get on the same page there. So I guess the insight here is to try and manage expectations early on, and update those expectations as the situation changes. Sorry, got a phone call. So looking here at keeping it professional, personal relationships can blur the lines of engagement. I've had some really great experiences with working with friends, and people I do consider friends, and I'm sure my co-founders can say the same. At the same time, it's really important to try and keep things professional when you're at work and when you're dealing with work projects, and drawing a line there, because there can be a blurring of the lines when it comes to expectations, as I said, on delivery of focus and things like that. So it's important to have these discussions early and often where possible. Sometimes you don't want to bring up these points, but it's better off dealing with it rather than letting it fester behind the scenes. And just know, and I'll refer back to working in crisis in a later slide, but looking at working in crisis and motivations between when comparing your business and your client's business, when it comes to the difference between surviving and not, and having a business and not, a client will always look after themselves first, and that's fair enough. If they don't have a business, then they can't pay you. So don't expect anyone to do you any favors when all the chips are down. Customers and businesses need to look after themselves first and foremost. So don't be relying on any favors in those situations.
Hey Matt, just to jump
Yeah,
in for a
Rich.
second,
Sure.
we've got a few questions in the chat that are
Yep.
asking about specifically tumultuous times like the Royal Commission, the Banking Royal Commission,
Sure.
and ways that you navigated that. So you mentioned that when the
Yep.
chips are down, not everyone's going to help. How is it that you guys navigated, you and your team navigated all of that unknown? If you
Sure.
want to highlight that.
Cool. So I might just jump to this slide then. Okay. So yeah, I guess the Banking Royal Commission for us was initially, it didn't seem like a big deal, and initially it seemed like a great opportunity. So we had a compliance platform, and we saw this as a great time to be able to target businesses that were being investigated or had undertakings against them, approach them with our offering, and be able to have a really specific, direct, and relevant pitch for them. So initially, the crisis didn't seem that big a deal, didn't seem to affect us, and we're looking at it like an opportunity. Ultimately, it did dramatically impact us. So our experience at the time, we had, I think we had about 3 or 4 different products that we were working on, and we'd pinned all our hopes on one. So it was a commissions processing software. We'd spent 1.5 years developing this. We were developing this specifically for one client. It was a general use case, but the idea was to build specifically for a client, and with the idea that they would validate that. They were funding that as well. And we didn't see it as I guess we saw it as a little bit of a risk, but it wasn't a major risk at the time. During the Royal Commission, it became very apparent that was a huge risk. The company that was funding that project the parent company was actually funding it, and they went out of business almost overnight. So this was a company, it's an ASX listed company. They had staff of a couple of hundred people, I think. And overnight they went out of business. All of a sudden, our discussions, we were at, I think, about 95% way through the project. We were waiting for that last validation. And our discussions were with the client were around trying to get that validation and getting our invoices paid. All of a sudden, our invoices stopped being paid, and people weren't interested in returning our calls. So as far as navigating that, navigating crisis, I think in our situation, we didn't really navigate it very well. And the learnings out of that would be that, as I've got here, cash flow gives you flexibility. We had decent cash flow, but we also had quite big overheads. So there was a very critical point during this whole time where all of a sudden we had bills to pay, and we had clients that weren't paying us. So we had a major risk there to the business, and that was extremely stressful. Ultimately, that's probably what led me to leaving the business. That sort of point of that real challenge there. If we had better cash flow, if we had more money in the bank, we would have been able to navigate that better. We did have a quite lean business model. So as I said, we saw that crisis as a time of opportunity. We were very good at spinning out concepts quickly. So our CEO was fantastic at coming up with a really insightful idea and hacking a proof of concept together and getting it out and getting buy-in and getting sales on that. And that was invaluable. And I think that skill set was very, very relevant at this time. And as this was going on, because I guess it wasn't as, I guess this sort of coronavirus process or this crisis, I guess it seemed to have sort of happened relatively quickly. The Royal Commission was more of a slow burn. So early on in the process, we were looking at ideas. Okay, what opportunities are there? Who can we sell what to? What proof of concepts can we get up and running really quickly, and pitch to people? So our lean sort of move fast model worked well there, but our overheads really killed us in the end. Also looking at your network, and yeah, as I said here, curate it in good times. Network's invaluable, and it's difficult, I guess, while we're going through a crisis right now, to go back and curate your network. But I guess moving forward, it's a learning, and it's something to think about. I found particularly during my own personal crisis, around about this same time, my personal network and my professional network were invaluable at a time where I was really struggling to try and get through and see, I guess, a light at the end of the tunnel. I reached out to a number of people professionally, and just to have a chat, and I was amazed at how willing people were to sit down and help and listen. And even if they weren't able to help directly, they were able to give me the time to talk ideas through, and in some cases just help calm me down, help give me perspective. But also I've found even during this crisis, I've already had people in my own network reach out and say, how are you for business? How are you for work? Do you need me to reach out to my network? So I guess it's a case of, making the most of good times when you have them, and curating your network, and having your business in a position that you can take advantage of situations like this. And also, I guess, to that last point, you can't plan for black swan events. That's what they are in nature. So don't worry about trying to plan for a crisis, because generally it would, if you were perfectly positioned for this, it probably would have cost you a lot of time and a lot of money to get into this position, and you would have given away upside for that preparedness. So don't try and plan for black swan events, but try and, I guess, deal with risk within your company. So cash flow risk, key customer risk, referring back to our point. All of a sudden we were pinning all of our hopes on one product and one customer. And I think that whether the Royal Commission happened or not, we were always going to do that. That's sort of what we needed to do at the time. And that was more of a case of circumstances. But yeah, when in the middle of a crisis, reach out to your network, look for support if you need it, but also look for opportunity, move fast. These things happen really quickly, and everyone's looking after their own situation. So they're generally not too concerned with what's going on with your business. They're first and foremost focused on saving their own business. Also, just as an aside, talking to a friend in business recently, and about this current situation, some of the advice I gave him was try and find an intersection of what you're good at, what you can offer, and what people need at this time, and what they're willing to pay for. Where do they see value? So look at it as a time of opportunity. If there's any more specific questions, happy to go over them as well. But otherwise, I'll just move back to where we were. Okay, so moving on to focus. So generally, ideas are plentiful and execution is difficult. This is one of the challenges that we faced in our company. We were great at coming up with new ideas, and it was one of our downfalls, I think, reflecting on the business. We were trying to sell 4 different products at different times, and focus on one, I mean, ultimately is what led to our downfall in some case. But also, I think not focusing on one approach early enough was what sort of put us in that situation later on. So focus, it's very difficult. There's a lot of shiny things in business. To the second point there, opportunities are everywhere. We had a number of different discussions with big banks, very big companies, partnership opportunities. We had plenty of meetings that had all the promise, plenty of upside, and not many actually eventuated to anything. Don't be worried about missing opportunities. There will be plenty. The most important thing is looking at what your goals are and what your focus is, and figuring out very quickly if those opportunities actually align with your motivations. It's very easy to be dragged around and your focus fragmented in terms of what you're building, who you're building for, but also, partnerships, potential contracts and things like that. Big business particularly love meetings. They love dangling carrots. And when you're a small startup, that can be fatal, getting caught up in that whole process. Looking at metrics and goals, that was one thing that we also struggle with. Metrics are difficult, particularly in an early stage, but where possible, it's important to have some sort of, stake in the ground and some sort of goal that you're aiming for or planning for. They don't have to be 100% accurate. They won't be. You shouldn't worry about being accurate, but it gives you something to measure from and something to reflect on. We weren't very good at this at the start. Our CTO, Ivan, loved this stuff and was constantly drilling it into us. And I think towards the end, we were better at setting some goals and looking at metrics. But it's definitely something we could have been better at in the whole overall approach to the company and building products. Reflecting on that as well. Plans, estimates, and forecasts are tools. They're not facts. It's very easy to get hung up on trying to plan for and estimate exactly what you think is going to happen and worry about what's going to be the situation when it doesn't pan out. Don't worry, because it won't. It won't work out exactly how you thought it did. If it did, well, great, good on you. That would be pretty amazing. But no one can tell the future, that I know. So don't worry so much about being exact with these numbers or being right. Something is better than nothing, and the idea is to put some stakes in the ground and move forward. Growing a team. It's a very challenging and slow process. We scaled remotely. So we initially had very limited cash flow. So we were limited with what we could scale with. We had quite a strong tech basis to the company. So we were able to get a fair way down the road before we thought we needed to scale the team out. We found it very difficult to find quality locally, particularly at a good intersection of quality versus cost. That was a real challenge for us. We ended up, as I said, scaling remotely. We had a team over in Ukraine, and that worked quite well for us. We were able to leverage a local business connections own development team, or their, an office that they had built overseas in Ukraine. The benefits of that was we were able to get up and running very quickly. We had an instant HR team. The team that we were working with was larger than the individuals that we were working with. So that, gave those individuals more of a team culture rather than an individual working remotely. I think it worked well for us at the time. Cost-wise, it was good initially. We were paying in US dollars, so as the Australian dollar went to shit, then it cost us a bit. But some of the other challenges, were trying to communicate well with an overseas team and trying to understand individuals and their motivations again. I think video chat was very important in that case, rather than just emails and text-based chat. Video chat allowed us to personalize a bit more with our team members, and it definitely helped in, getting more buy-in from the company and from the guys, and also to have some more accountability as well. Rich?
Hey Matt, quick
Yep.
question just from the chat.
Yep.
Ben, another member of Iceman Hub at Hunter Street, has
Okay.
asked, how did you actually get from product to first sales? And I think you're coming into that now. I'd like to elaborate on that.
Yeah, sure. Product to first sales. So as I said, we tried out a whole bunch of different ideas initially. We had the benefit of working directly with the client to start with. So I guess our situation was a little bit different in that we weren't building a product and hoping to find someone to pay for it. We had a customer that was willing to pay some development fee for us to build a product relevant to them. So our first sale was basically converting an existing retainer and directing that into the company rather than our CEO, who was currently building that product. To give a different perspective, the new startup that I'm working with now, we're building basically a scheduling or appointment-based product, and we've identified a number of companies that this is a problem for. It turns out that the founders, the co-founders in this business have part ownerships in business that this is a relevant product for, but they also have a network of individuals that they have already reached out to and run their idea past, and we understand that there is a market there. So we have already built, I guess, network of businesses that we can approach initially. So I think from that perspective of getting from first build to actual sales, I think sales can happen before you actually have a product, and it's almost more important to actually start that process early and talk to your customers before you have a fully fleshed out product, to know that you're building for a relevant audience and that there is an opportunity there. Because otherwise you can spend a whole lot of time building for a use case that doesn't really exist or is a very niche use case. So data early is very important and relevant, and it's not always easy, but don't be afraid to talk to businesses about your ideas. Don't be afraid to simply package up a concept and approach some businesses and just ask if they are interested. And generally there's some opportunities there to say offer, all right, if you jump on early with us, we'll give you a discounted rate, or we'll give you the first couple of months free. On pricing, could probably jump to that. I'm never really a fan of giving away things for free. I'm very much of the belief that you should attach a value to something, particularly when you're looking for people to test out products early on. There's more of a motivation for them to actually use a product or to give you feedback if they are actually paying for it. It doesn't have to be the full rate, but as long as there's some dollar value attached to it, you have that motivation there. So that's a discussion that we've had with this new company of we can offer to give companies access to our new product for free for the first 12 months, just if they give us feedback. But the approach that we're looking to take is to actually charge them, say the rate would be $100 a month, we'll charge you $50 a month. That way that there is some motivation there to actually use the product and actually give some feedback because they are paying it. All right, so where are we up to? Focus? Yeah, okay, cool. Again, if there's any more questions there, feel free to jump in. Growing a team, yep. Yeah, so I worked with some great people. I worked with some absolute crap people. Just because you're outsourcing and you're working with existing teams overseas doesn't mean everything's great or everything's bad. It's simply a reflection, I guess, of the local market. We found that by outsourcing remotely, we were able to leverage an existing network rather than trying to having to develop that locally. So that helped us scale quickly. On a personal note, on a number of projects, I've made a lot of use of websites like Elance, even like Behance. You can reach out to individuals directly through that. So jump online. There's a whole bunch of freelancing and outsourcing opportunities and it allows you to try a number of people quite quickly. I've got a whole bunch of ideas around how to do that. So if anyone is interested in how to actually go about, I guess, setting up some projects on Elance, or how to, is it Elance now? Upwork. Used to be Elance. So Upwork or Freelance or anything like that. Yeah, I've got a whole bunch of ideas around how to effectively do that, how to test out a bunch of people, how to set up projects to make sure that you get decent results. If anyone wants any further information about that, feel free to reach out. Okay, contracts and partnerships. As I said, there's partnerships are plentiful, particularly if you've got some interesting ideas and products. There's often existing businesses that are looking to leverage that as to extend their offering or to as a marketing tool to help sales conversations. So we found that yeah, we had a lot of discussions with customers for our financial services software. We were in discussions with a lot of different companies to partner with them. We ended up pulling off one, I think. We probably had about 5 other conversations that didn't really go anywhere. Again, it can be very distracting. A key thing with this is understand contracts. So when you start getting into the nitty-gritty of partnerships and deals, distribution agreements, things like that, it's important, I believe, to actually read through every line of the contract. We had a contract, for example, with a potential partner who we ended up doing some work with, and we had a good relationship with them. But the contract, there was a clause in there where I think they were granted exclusive distribution rights, and they also had an option in the case of our business failed to purchase at market rate. So effectively, they could have secured exclusive distribution rights, cut off all of the distribution, choked our company from a cash flow perspective till we were in distress, and then swoop in and purchase the company at market rate, which, I mean, assuming no one else was looking to buy it, could have been nothing or $1. So that wasn't, I don't believe that was an intentionally malicious clause or situation in the contract, but it could have eventuated. And I didn't see it. My co-founder didn't see it. It was actually our CTO, our other co-founder, Ivan, who on like second pass actually highlighted that. Equally, yep. I might just finish that point quickly. We just had contracts where lawyers reviewed them, and we paid them to review them, and they missed some obvious holes in them as well. So you're the one who's going to pay if it goes to shit in the end. So it's worth the time to actually read through and understand the contract, and don't be afraid to ask questions about them. You got a question, Richard?
Yeah, Matt, we've got one more come from Katie. She's asking about the risk mitigation strategies you'd put in place if you'd started over. So maybe there's about 10 minutes to go. So maybe if you could tie something into that, and then we'll move to the wrap up.
Risk mitigation strategies if we're starting over. Thanks, Katie. That's nice and broad. Okay, so risk mitigation strategies. I think moving fast, getting data as early as possible. So getting feedback from customers, staying focused. So have some clear goals and outcomes in mind for a particular product that you're trying to build, work towards that, and be able to iterate quickly on that, get feedback on that, and make decisions quickly on whether it's working or not. And in which case pivot if you need, or continue to push with that. I think, keep a team lean, as lean as possible. I know working with service-based products, there's a big overhead, I guess, in hiring new staff. And particularly if you're working on fixed price contracts and you're paying hourly rates, you as a business are taking on a whole lot of risk. So where possible, try and keep focused and limited in where you outsource or where you bring in external expenses, and make sure that you have a bit of a buffer of cash flow to cover you in the case of a crisis, or a case of people just don't want to pay their bills. I don't know if I've answered that completely. Feel free, you can hit me up later, Katie, if you want some more insights. But I might quickly just fly through the rest of this stuff. So yeah, pricing, it's hard. There's no correct way to do it. It will change. We had a number of different clients using the same product, paying different prices at different times, and it changed over time. Context matters. So looking at what is the value that you're conveying in terms of, I guess, one insight would be invoicing, how to get people to pay invoices. Look at how you frame your costs in an invoice. So we had a client that didn't want to pay on time, so we increased the price by 10% and then gave them a 10% discount if they paid on time. So effectively they're paying the invoice, but they were being penalized an extra 10% if they didn't pay on time. And I think it took them 2 pay cycles to start paying on time, and then they were one of our best clients. So think about the context of how you're framing your costs and how you're framing the items in your invoice. And that goes back as well to charging early customers for product. Free has a different connotation to even $1. So money is powerful. Sales, I never considered myself a salesperson until I realized that it was all about relationships. And this is very relevant to, I guess, what I've tried to do here. We, as a startup, we went over to Web Summit. It was an amazing, eye-opening experience. This is an international web conference, tech conference, based in, it was Dublin the first year, and we went to Lisbon twice. It was fantastic. It was one of the best motivators ever. And we had a fantastic time. We also had a booth, and I was forced to actually do sales and talk to potential investors. I found the best approach and technique there is to turn around the questions and the pitch to your audience. Look at what they're trying to, what their problems are, what they're trying to understand, or what they're trying to achieve, and then curate your pitch to that. It also helps you to very quickly triage through who's a customer, who's a potential customer, and who isn't. That was an invaluable insight for me. So always look to try and turn around and curate your message to a particular situation. Also, yeah, numbers can tell any story you want, but it's when you have your product in there, the results are what matter. So don't get too caught up on all of the fluff. I think we've run through crisis. Okay, so just generally, these are some other points that I've sort of come across, and I think also relate to some general questions or ideas or concepts that I see coming up quite a bit. First one, don't be afraid to share your ideas. Your ideas aren't unique. And as I said earlier, execution is a lot more difficult than coming up with ideas. I've got a million ideas. If you want ideas for a business, speak to me. The best thing about sharing your ideas is it allows you to refine them in your head. It also allows you to get early feedback and validate that what you think is relevant is actually worthwhile or valuable, and someone's actually willing to pay for it. It also helps you identify whether your idea is particularly unique, whether there are existing businesses out there. You'll be surprised often at how many things have been done before and how many businesses currently exist for your special idea that you're trying to create. Acknowledging that you don't understand something is really liberating and can provide a whole lot of insights. It's often very scary to when you're having a conversation with someone, particularly in a sales meeting, or you're trying to provide support, particularly if you're supposed to be the expert in the area. If you're working with someone, don't be afraid to ask them to explain something or actually acknowledge that you don't completely understand a concept. It will allow you to gain a whole lot more insight. and you look like a whole lot more of an idiot if you say that you do understand something and then it gets put back on you and you need to explain it. So yeah, saying I don't understand or can you please explain that is very liberating, and something that I try to practice, even though it's consciously very difficult to do. Yeah, don't worry about being perfect, because you can't be, and don't worry about being right because you will be wrong. So this again goes to I guess the idea of planning and setting goals, and looking for particular outcomes. Doing something is better than nothing. Action is important, and making decisions and moving forward is important. So try not to get bogged down in having things perfect and having all your forecasts exact. Also, yeah, you can't tell the future, so that also goes to that similar sort of concept. And yeah, no one knows what they're doing to an extent. People generally people have experience, people have knowledge, and are generally good at what they're doing in their job. But that idea of, I guess, an imposter syndrome, which is something that I constantly battle even now, is very common, and it really helps to try and put it into perspective when you think that everyone is really making it up as they go along. It's all new for a lot of people, and people who pretend they know exactly what's happening and how things are going to work out are often full of it and aren't necessarily the people you want to work with. So it's okay to feel like an imposter. What is not okay is getting bogged down in inaction because you're worried about being wrong. So I guess moving to the next points, just as a quick summary, there's no one way. So as I said, these are my thoughts and opinions. This is not financial advice. Everyone does their things differently. I have come from a background of working with small and medium business, working in the financial services industry. I have seen many different approaches to the same sort of problems. Some of them have worked and others haven't. Things work for a lot of different reasons, and they don't work for a lot of different reasons. Everyone has their own situation, their own, as I said, time constraints, cash flow constraints. And sometimes it's just pure bad luck. Luck plays a big part in a lot of this. I'm a big believer in just being in the game long enough and hopefully something comes of it. So yeah, as I said here, action is better than inaction. And just quickly, before Richard cuts me off, so this is one of my favorite charts. This is the Dunning-Kruger effect. So like I was saying, people don't really know what they're doing. Generally, this is, I guess, what you call knowing enough to be dangerous. So generally people get a general or initial understanding of concepts and think that they know everything. And yeah, it's often that with more time, well, the more you know, the more you realize you don't know. So that knowledge x-axis, I think, is also relevant to time and experience. And just quickly, I'm a big fan of a book recommendation. So this is one that I've read recently. Really helps with the psychology of making decisions and understanding concepts like resulting and the difference between making good decisions and outcoming, and the results are not necessarily based on whether you made a good decision or not. Sorry, not outcoming, resulting. That's the word. Anyway, Rich, you got something for me?
That's it. Thanks, Matt. Thanks so much for
Awesome.
that talk. We've just hit 9:02.
Perfect.
I know we can't applause, but thanks so much for
Told
being
you I
here
could
this
ramble
morning
for a bit.
before everyone heads off to their work or work from home. If you want to get Matt, here's his contacts. Please reach out if you have any questions. I know that there's a lot that he wrapped up in his presentation, and he has a lot of insight into everything. He's always got advice for everyone at the hub whenever they have questions. So hit him up. He's more than happy to share. But thanks again, Matt.
All good.
Let's wrap up. Thank you everyone for coming. Thank you for taking part in Setup Stories. This happens every month. have a look at it. Take a look at the I2N socials and our Eventbrite page for programs and events coming up. This will happen again 6th of May, and we will let you know. But thanks again, Matt. Let's wrap up. See you all later.
Cool. Thanks, guys.